Hey beautiful people, it's Lily. This is Legit Nutrition Hawaii. Sodium restriction. This is actually one of those issues where every body is different, which doesn't imply what most people want it to imply, which is that some people thrive on a diet of fried chicken and waffles, while others are capable of eating a vegetarian diet.
Some people can't be vegan or they die.
Yeah. No. Every body is different. Not so different as to require a completely different macronutrient profile or fit you into a separate physiological category, but different enough to imply that small tweaks in macro and micronutrients are required for some people to feel their best and truly thrive. That's mostly for people with specific health issues. And sodium is definitely one of those tweak-worthy micronutrients. So sodium is most famously useful for things like high blood pressure. People with high blood pressure are at a higher risk for essentially all of the leading causes of death, including heart failure, heart attack, heart disease, strokes, diabetes, kidney issues, etc. So if you have high blood pressure, you need to get that stuff under control. And a low sodium, plant-based diet is the absolute best way to do that. It's many times more effective than taking antihypertensive drugs, and lovely, a whole food plant-based diet comes with only good side effects, unlike those drugs. If you have high blood pressure, eat unprocessed, whole, high-carb plant foods and add little to no salt. I'm talking like a teeny tiny pinch or less, and at that point, there's really no point. I know eating the first few meals, it won't feel like it, but I guarantee you your taste buds will adapt and you will learn to enjoy the natural tastes of foods. If you have been eating a standard American diet and then you switch to a plant-based diet, as your health improves and your blood pressure drops, you may be able to start incorporating small amounts of sodium back into your diet, but that needs to be monitored. And once you've gone through the trouble and the cravings of quitting salt, why restart it? Now we start getting into the funky stuff, because for people without high blood pressure, I am much less enthusiastic about recommending low sodium or no sodium added diets. It appears that salt acts as an oxidant, which means that it's capable of causing cellular damage. That is a real issue to consider when you are choosing a diet with health and longevity in mind, because eating salt may have small but significant effects on your overall health and your aging process. I did once meet a young woman who had lupus, and she was able to hold off her illness by abstaining from sodium, but that is purely anecdotal. I have no scientific information to back that up. However, most people in the developed world have bigger problems to worry about than skin potentially aging a little bit faster than they would like, or small amounts of DNA damage. They have to worry about being 100 pounds overweight, or having diabetes, or having fatty liver disease. And these people are used to a standard American diet. And that diet is full of flavor-enhancing sodium. And if we expect these people to have any shred of longevity on a whole food plant-based diet, we can't tell them to exclusively eat food that tastes flavorless and bland to them. Like, I don't think my boyfriend would be successful on a salt-free vegan diet. It just wouldn't be able to keep his culinary or taste interest. So for a lot of the population, the choice is kind of between adding some salt and other flavorings to their whole food, high carb, plant-based diet and thriving, or eating a salt-free plant-based diet and eventually saying, fuck this shit, I don't want to eat cardboard anymore. Mr. Tinkles, with your tinkle collar, yes, exit. I've also had some interesting personal experience. When I first went vegan, I did a 100% raw food diet in the 80-10-10 style. It was based on fruit, and there was no onions, no garlic, no spices, and no salt. I did that for 9 months, and after the first month or two, my taste buds did adapt, and I stopped being completely obsessed with salt. But the cravings never really went away. And even though my blood sugar and hypoglycemia issues had mostly resolved themselves, there were times where I would get like this spacey head fog kind of feeling. And I felt this way even when I was literally eating enough calories for an adult male gorilla. So I know it's not that I wasn't eating enough. But when I did stop the sodium, I did lose, I think it was like between 5 and 10 pounds of just what I'm pretty sure was purely water weight, which was nice. And even though I was enjoying the diet and the way that I was feeling, especially after having been sick for so long, it did take a lot of willpower to keep me away from those salty, savory foods that I was really missing. But I was able to maintain this diet for about 9 months. And then I ate something with salt in it, and my body went berserk! I could not hold myself back from eating salted foods. Even though I was feeling desperately guilty and I had gained all of my water weight back. But since that day, I have not been able to resist salt for more than 3 consecutive days. My body craves the sodium too much, and I start to get that spaced out feeling. And finally, I figured out why. I had depressed adrenal function in my teenage years, which has come and gone throughout the rest of my life. And even though my health has, for the most part, improved immensely, my adrenal health is still a weak point. And if your adrenals aren't in tip-top shape, they're not as able as they should be, ideally, to sufficiently prevent sodium loss through your urine and sweat. And so if you're on a low-sodium diet, but your body is losing more sodium than it's being given, you will crave salt. So I have noticed that if I abstain from added sodium, it doesn't take long before I feel a little bit spaced out and my electrolytes just aren't where they need to be. I have also noticed that when I eat foods that aren't seasoned at all, I don't feel as satisfied by the food. And I've noticed that I eat past my sense of fullness in a quest for satiety. So a little bit of salt or seasoning really helps me with feeling satiated. Of course, on the other side of that coin is if your food is overly seasoned and hyper-palatable, it's easy to overeat because those hyper-palatable seasonings are stimulating the pleasure centers in your brain in a way that is capable of overshadowing the appetite regulatory mechanisms that are put in place to stop you from eating when you've had enough. Which is why eating with mindfulness and awareness in either case is important to health. So I personally choose to eat sodium. Generally speaking, I have it in my evening meal, which is dinner, though I no longer place restrictions on myself if I want, say, like a cooked meal in the middle of the day and I want to put some seasoning on that. I do have thoughts now and then where I'm like, oh, well, if I stop eating this salt, I would probably lose 5 or 10 pounds and I'd just like look a little bit leaner and more ripped. Or I think maybe if I stop eating sodium, it'll improve like the way that my skin ages as I get older, which, let's face it, none of us want to look like Robert Redford. And I think about that stuff, and I think maybe one of these days I'll think about like reducing sodium, or maybe like being able to eliminate sodium, but right now I crave the salt. I want the salt, and the salt makes a difference to my satiety, and that is important to me. It's important for me to enjoy my food and to look forward to my food and to really, well, just enjoy my food, especially coming from a past of eating disorders and restriction and, you know, technically orthorexia, where it's easy for me to get to a point where I'm putting my health up on this huge pedestal and I'm getting to the point where I'm restricting more and more and more, and I'm just not happy with my food. I want to be happy with my food. So for now, I'm not able to comfortably resist the salt. Certainly, I don't eat anywhere near the normal amount of sodium for an American, which is like 2,300 micrograms a day. Essentially like 2.3 grams of sodium per day. I haven't kept track of it, but I'm probably somewhere around like 1,000, 1,500. And there are some experts, I'll get to them in a minute, who say that 1,000, 1,500 is a great place to be. So I keep my sodium low like this by not eating processed foods. And generally speaking, not eating salt before dinner. I don't know, maybe I'm addicted, maybe I'm lazy, maybe I'm undedicated, sure. Or maybe my body just needs the sodium. But enough about me, what do the experts say? Dr. Greger talks about sodium restriction quite a bit. He has also addressed those studies that found that extremely low sodium increases risk of mortality. And he found that the no sodium or extremely low sodium eaters' higher mortality rate was based mostly on confounding factors. Dr. Greger believes that eating a virtually no added sodium diet is the healthiest diet for humans, and is great for everyone. Dr. McDougall, who wrote The Starch Solution, recommends using salt and sugar to flavor the outer surfaces of your food. And that's to increase its palatability, reduce other cravings, and increase satisfaction. He recommends using these flavor enhancers only on the surface of your food because that reduces the amount of total sodium that you're likely to consume in a meal. That means don't salt while you're cooking, put it on after the fact, like at the table. Ew, I touched a fly. And he is, of course, talking about whole, unprocessed plant foods. Please get out. Good boy. Dr. Pamela Popper is pretty much on the same boat as Dr. McDougall. Both of them acknowledge that a little bit of added sodium in an overall extremely healthy diet is likely not going to cause significant adverse health effects. Both of these doctors also have patient practices where they see people from the real world who are struggling with real diseases who need to be able to drastically change their diets in a sustainable way. And both of them accurately acknowledge that the majority of people are not going to stick to this kind of huge lifestyle change while they're living in the midst of a society that isn't doing the same and who are used to overly processed, extremely palatable junk foods. They have to make their whole high-carb plant foods taste good if they're gonna stick to it. So whether or not you decide to restrict your sodium is totally up to you. Either way, and perhaps especially if you consume added dietary sodium, it is extremely important to stay well hydrated so that your body is able to process that sodium. Stay well hydrated, but not overhydrated, to the point where you get that spaced out feeling that indicates that your electrolytes are out of whack. When I say stay hydrated, I mean consume at least 64 ounces of fluids per day. And I like to get those fluids from clean, that means filtered, and remineralized drinking water. And how you manage to clean and filter your water is completely your responsibility of figuring out. I live in Hawaii where the water's not fluoridated, it's just lightly chlorinated, and so it's enough for me to use a Brita filter and then put like 1 or 2 mineral drops into the water that I drink. And I do that on most days. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I don't drink remineralized water. If you live in some place like Chicago, where the tap water tastes like battery acid, you're gonna have to invest in a better water filter. I'm not sure what's available in that area, so I can't tell you. I know that most health food stores and a lot of other places have water machines where you can get like nice, clean, distilled or reverse osmosis water. And that's great. Add a couple mineral drops into that, drink it up. I personally tend to drink about 100 ounces of fluid per day. That includes the 1 liter of water that I put into my smoothie. That does not include the water that I consume as food, like in my nice juicy star fruits that I'm eating right now. This is just a little something extra. Also, if you're going to use salt, be mindful of the type of salt you're using. Iodized table salt and the utter crap found in junk food is not what you want in your body. If you buy canned or jarred foods, especially if they're not organic, do try to buy the no sodium added or low sodium varieties. Personally, I use a high mineral sea salt. I think it's the Real Salt brand. I've heard fine things about Himalayan sea salt as well. And I also use Bragg's liquid aminos, which I believe is made with sea salt. Keep in mind that salt is by no means a health food, nor should it be a major source of dietary minerals. But like any other life form, humans require a certain amount of electrolytes to function, and staying within electrolyte balance can be a little bit more challenging for people with adrenal or kidney problems. Alright guys, I hope this has been helpful and has answered some of your questions. I do not believe that a low to moderate amount of sodium consumption is anything that we need to be stressed out about by any means. The stress is worse for you than the salt. So in this case, I want you to do what feels right for your body, keeping in mind that Doritos are never what's right for your body. Your intuition isn't a moron. So if your intuition is telling you that you need Doritos, that's not your intuition. So if this has been helpful, please give me a thumbs up. Feel free to leave your questions, comments, other discussion thingies in the comments section below. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more awesome informative videos such as this. One day I will answer all of your questions. So until next time, make better choices for that salty blob of flesh you inhabit, and take really, really good care. You did enjoy it. Come on. Dr. McDougall, who wrote the Dr. McDougall, who wrote Starch Solution. We do that every day.